Welcome. Welcome, everyone. My name's Maureen Muldoon. I am a career and internship specialist with SuccessWorks at the College of Letters and Science, and with Emily Reynolds with the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies. We're going to talk about internships today in this global pandemic that we are living through. And we're going to hear from a few students and learn more about their experiences. And then we're going to hear from partners of ours from Gathering Waters and from the Office of Sustainability here at UW-Madison. So for the students who've joined us, we're going to make sure we get your questions answered and hopefully share some resources with you to be able to continue exploring your options. So starting out, we're going to start with Claire Finucane. And Claire, if you could tell us more about your academic background and your career interests, and then more about your internships and advice that you have.
Sure. Okay. So my name is Claire Finucane. I'm a senior here at UW-Madison. I'll be graduating this December. So this summer was kind of like my last set of internships before graduating and whatnot. But I'm a student studying environmental science and conservation biology. So to start out, the internship that I did this summer was called the Great Lakes Geospatial Data Visualization Internship. This was hosted through Sea Grant, Wisconsin, which is an extension of UW. Within this, I was actually partnered with someone from the EPA in Duluth, Minnesota. So a lot of my work that actually went in for this internship was done on the EPA side of things, not the Sea Grant side of things. That being said, I did work pretty closely with other interns that were hired through Sea Grant and whatnot. But yeah, my internship is actually pretty special because it was not possible until COVID hit. Because everything went virtual, the internship was able to move down to the Madison area, and I had the opportunity to work with the people from Duluth. So it worked out well for me. And the internship I actually applied for was through Sea Grant. They were hiring several people for like science communications, different like indigenous projects and stuff going on in the Madison area. So I applied to those that I heard about in January, both from my advisors for my majors, along with a mentor grad student that I work with and have worked with over the past like year and a half now. So it's good to have people that kind of like email you their mass emails they get about internships and stuff. That's where I heard about a lot of the experiences, especially this one. It was also listed on Sea Grant's website, but I definitely would not have found it if someone didn't tell me about it. This application process was pretty detailed compared to some other ones I've done. I did need 2 letters of recommendation, a personal statement that was 2 to 3 pages saying why I wanted the internship, transcripts, and an updated resume, which is pretty normal. So what helped me apply to this internship in particular, letters of rec are sometimes difficult to get, and you have to plan ahead for them. So for me, it was really helpful. Like the semester before, I kind of like made a list of who I would want to write my letters of recommendation, and I also had a brag list for them of kind of what I wanted them to say about me in a letter of recommendation, and it definitely made it easier for them to write. Just because like a person doesn't know everything about you. So it's good for them to know your skills, things you've done in your academic career that kind of makes you seem like a great choice for an internship. So that's something I really recommend that you can get started on right now. And then the other thing that helped me was kind of having a skill set that other people like set me apart from other people. So I had programming and GIS experience, which isn't required for an environmental science or conservation bio major, but were classes I was interested in and took and kind of set me apart for that. And with like an online experience, it was very different than a real experience. I never, like, even to this day, I'm still volunteering with the EPA and working on some projects, and I've never met anyone from there in person. So it's kind of funny. But that being said, like for me, my internship wouldn't have been possible without like things being moved virtually. And I actually found a couple of really great things about it. I was able to meet with like 15 different people, like have one-on-one interviews with them to hear about their organization and whatnot. Because I am interested in like the environmental sector, like working for the EPA or DNR. So I got to hear a lot about those different organizations and sit on tons of meetings weekly with these different organizations and hearing about kind of progress that they're making and projects they're working on. So that was really helpful. The other big thing was that I got to attend two conferences this summer that would have been in California and Canada, I believe. So I definitely would not have been able to go to those. But in a lot of like internship situations, like they want you to get the most out of the internship. So it's really great. You can like ask for things. I'm presenting what I worked on over the summer at AGU, a conference in December. So there's a lot of experiences that can come out of your internship because it is virtual. So try not to be too negative about it, is kind of what I found. And then kind of some advice for taking on your internship too is you need to be able to make yourself a schedule and set goals throughout your internship. Just because there's not someone there in person kind of guiding you through that process, it's really good to kind of take that on yourself, and keep track of what you've done. I know like I had a virtual notebook where I wrote down meetings, like meeting notes, things I've been working on at my projects so that I could keep track of it in the future as well. Just because some of that stuff gets lost in the virtual world sometimes. Um, and then finally, just some tips that I have for you guys with finding environmental internship kind of in this time is apply to a lot of different things. Like I think I applied to 5 internships and like 4 of them fell through with COVID. So definitely apply to a lot because you never know what's going to happen. And start looking further too, because I know like I wanted to stay in Madison, so I didn't look in like Duluth for internships, even though this had been listed there. So I know like the Smithsonian has internships that they're doing like virtually this summer and stuff. So now you don't need to go to DC. You can do it all from the comfort of your home. But also go to like job fairs and stuff. I know Wisconsin Ecology does a great one. It's usually a Burge Hall. I'm sure it'll be online this year. But like make connections with people you like meet at any like job fair, thing like that. It's really helpful if you go into like an interview or they're reading their resume and they say, oh, I remember meeting this person. So yeah, that's my advice. I know it's a lot, like in 5 minutes, but hopefully that helped.
All right. Thank you, Claire. I'm sure we will have some follow-up questions for you as we get through. Stephanie Salgado, if you would like to go next.
All right, that was amazing, Claire. You summarized everything in like what 5 minutes. I was just like nodding all the time. But in the same tangent of what Claire was saying, my name is Stephanie Janet Salgado Altamirano. I'm a sophomore, technically though in junior standing. My degrees or what I'm pursuing right now is political science and environmental studies. And then how do I heard about my virtual internships? Just like Claire, those mass emails that the Nelson Institute sends you are a couple of those organizations that I like signed up for. So in the past, I've been involved with the Boys and Girls Club, and I am now currently a TOPS college, I don't know, coordinator. It's just like the post program you do after Avid. And I was always sent this email saying like possible internships. And so this internship before COVID, what I had planned for this summer was an internship with the lieutenant governor. And I had already planned out everything, right? And my living statuses and whatsoever. However, that all fell through. As Claire has said, like you have to have plan B, C, and D. And when it fell through, I saw the email that the Boys and Girls Club sent me, and it said like these are some possible remote internships that we could offer, and it was paid, which is something so bizarre from internships. So even though it did not necessarily like connected to my major, I still applied to the internships, and the application just looked like a couple questions on why would you need this, why would you need us to get to give you a payment or like a pay stub, and then ultimately your resume. and I applied, and they said yes a couple days later. But the original internship I was applying for was for the land and conservation department in the capital. But later on, it turned out that they have put me into the Boys and Girls Club education department. And till this day, I couldn't be more grateful. It just opened my eyes to like a lot of social justice issues that the Madison community is facing. And it was the perfect correlation between my poli sci and my environmental studies major that just like bring out my passion for it. So, um, as Claire have said earlier, that my biggest advice would be to like sign up for a lot of like those newsletters that are like for internships, whether that be Nelson Institute, Success Works, right? Um, whatever organizations there's at college and outside and around Madison. And then from there, reach out, send an email to an organization like, do you guys have any available internships? Here is my resume, that little like elevator speech. You gotta like, got it ready to know what you do next. And it just has helped me so much to like really discover how to be, for instance, organized. Because in my internship, they encouraged me to plan out this whole project to make a student advisory for the nonprofit. And I had to like make it up from zero, from the ground up. And it just like, it really put on my skills of like organizing and activism, my hat on, on top. So it just helped me a lot.
Definitely. That's great. Thank you, Stephanie. We'll have some more questions for you. And Jake Dudley.
Hi, everyone. Claire and Stephanie, well done. That was really good. Very, very interesting. I actually have questions for both of you because it sounds really cool. No, so my name's Jake. I'm a junior. I'm studying econ with a math emphasis and then environmental studies. And I spent this summer working on the FarmLink project. So the FarmLink project was started as a response to sort of COVID because I don't know if you guys remember, but early on there was a lot of news reports on this food going to waste because all these restaurants had closed. And then just these absolute, I guess, blockbusters, what I'd call them, lines at food banks and food pantries, just as people lose their jobs and are unable to support themselves. So it started in an effort to take those farms with that surplus produce and get it to those food banks so that not only could they have food, but they would have fresh produce to give to these communities and these people in need. So it's sort of on the environmental side, it has sort of two aspects to it, and this is part of what appealed to me. I was able to basically take what I had learned and we'd done food systems. I don't know if you guys have taken this class, but environmental studies 126, they go through a couple different like systems throughout the Madison community, but one of them is food and food waste. And I had known a little bit about food waste through that class and just how much CO2 equivalents in terms of methane it generates and CO2 as well. So I knew that this was an environmental thing as well as like a social thing and trying to help these people. So it definitely piqued my interest there. And in terms of hearing about it and the application process, my sister actually, she knew someone who was on the team to begin with because this like it didn't exist until April. So she told me about it, and then I had to fill out a couple of forms, submit resume, submit cover letter, and then interview twice. But it ended up being just like all college students, including the organizational top of the structure, who were basically saw this and said, "Hey, we all need to do something. Like, how can we just sit here and I'm sure everyone felt this, but there was just sort of this feeling of not being able to help, and like you just sit there and you see these things happening and like what can you do, how can you help? So this was that effort put into practice. My role specifically was I was on the food insecurity team. I guess I still am, but it's moved rapidly since then. So essentially what that means is I work to research, identify, and then work with and try and get food to the most food insecure communities. It started in the West Coast, but once I hopped on, it was the whole country. So I've spent a lot of time talking with some boys and girls. The woman who heads the Boys and Girls Club on the West Coast, she's one of our partners. We work with them and talking with all sorts of different organizations and food bank managers. across the country, as well as farmers as well. We've ended up, to this day, I think we're at like 15 million pounds of food rescued and donated to food banks, which is really, really great. And yeah, so I've sort of gone from the calling and moving and placing to the more larger structural changes. Okay, how do we not only put a band-aid over this problem, but make it so that they can be consistent aid and consistent help to these communities? So that's sort of like the pivot we're going for now. In terms of it being online and stuff, it's really interesting, I thought, because we use our methods of communication are Slack and Zoom. So I don't know if you guys have ever used Slack, but it's kind of like Teams to a certain extent. It just gives you like a forum with different channels and different ways to communicate with each other. Really awesome. I'm a huge proponent of Slack. It's very organized, and it keeps like different ways. It keeps basically different communication channels separate, but it also feels a little bit more urgent than email, in my opinion. So it's very helpful. And also we had we have some great like leadership teams who are able to foster this sense of community and keep us going, not just in the work we do from 9 to 5, but also outside of that. So they'll bring in like guest speakers, or they'll have like call it FarmLink bingo, flingo, like we'll do that some nights, stuff like that, just to keep camaraderie up and sort of meet each other. Because at the end of the day, like we all are like the same age and sort of similarly guided in terms of what we want to do. So we've said, hey, we need to work together and grow ourselves, not just within the work we do, but also outside, and continue to have conversations with each other. So we've all made ourselves like trying to be really open and trying to be available to talk to one another with anything that goes on. And then in terms of tips of finding an environmental internship during this time, if anyone's interested, we have an info session on Sunday. I'm gonna do a quick plug here at I think it's at 7 p.m. It's on our website. I'll link it. We're onboarding for I think our spring team, so we're trying to get more people involved. So if anyone wants to hop on that, I can definitely get you more information on that if you're interested. And I think also, and this speaks to what Stephanie and Claire said too, just being aware and sort of like using the networks that are already created and built around you and leveraging those. So keeping an eye on your email when Emily sends a new email out, or going and keep getting on the SuccessWorks chain, so that when they send something out too, like for me as an econ student, they do a really great job. We have great career advisors there. So they'll send like a weekly email out with different opportunities. So keeping an eye on the email, LinkedIn, trying to be as active as you can to a certain extent, just because everything is virtual. So people are all on their computers, they're checking that. So staying involved and trying to be open in that front. And then finally, I'd say be responsive, and even if you don't have the answer to something or aren't able to do something, just communicating to someone that you are and having that line of communication open is super important, in being available, especially now. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't know. That was a lot. Threw a lot in there. So
Thanks, Jake. A lot of good advice. I'm sure we'll have some follow-up questions on that. All right. I'm going to add the other questions here. Hopefully those come through. Jason, if you'd like to go next.
Sure, I'm a little intimidated following those three, but I'll do my best here. My name's Jason Gallup. I manage the student intern program at the UW-Madison Office of Sustainability. So our office aims to be a hub for sustainability on campus. We look to facilitate education and influence operations, and to influence resource management. Those the kind of the three goals that we try to combine toward a more sustainable campus and community. And that's reflected kind of in our somewhat strange, but because of that helpful structure, we have a co-director system. One of our directors is in the Nelson Institute, Kathy Middlecamp, and one director in FP&M, so Facilities Planning and Management. And that's a nice way to kind of bridge the gap between education and operations. And so being on the Nelson side, I am focused on our students and our internship and our education, but also connecting with the work that we're doing over on the other side. So basically the goal of our internship under my watch is three things. We look to deepen sustainability literacy, we look to develop professional skills, and to consult with campus partners. And so we have a team of currently 16 paid interns. I always want to make that clear. This is a paid internship, right? There's always confusion with that word. At the start of my career, I started as an unpaid intern and then was promoted to paid intern, and nobody's ever quite sure. So we have 16 interns and they work on a variety of different teams. And so we've got a team that works on green office certification. We've got a team that works with green events that Emily knows well. We've got a team who works on communications. We've got a variety, and I could go through them all, but I'd encourage you to just go check out our website. So what's different about the internship this year? A whole lot, right? Almost everything. We are a year-long paid internship. So interns typically start in June 1st, usually. We have a 10-week summer session, which is focused on that first goal of deepening sustainability literacy. Most of our interns come with a bit of an environmental background, but not everyone. It's not required. And so we spend some time kind of learning about, we call it Susty 101, right? Sustainability 101. Like, how does waste and recycling work on campus and in the broader community? What about food waste? How does water and energy work? We do field trips. We go to the landfill, to the biodigester where our food waste goes. We go to the Charter Street plant. Some of the same field trips that I'm sure you experienced in 126. But we do a lot of that. We go to the wastewater treatment plant. We see things firsthand, and then we try to figure out where we can make a difference as an internship program on campus and around the community. And we start to develop some of the relationships to consult with those partners. So we transitioned all of that online. We didn't get to do any of the fun field trips in person, but we had a bunch of really willing partners, like at the wastewater treatment plant, at the landfill, to do virtual field trips with us. And it's not the same, but at least we could still get the information and get some of that experience. So that's the first way it changed. I want to not take up too much time here. Some of our teams were able to just transition exactly what they do really smoothly to an online platform, right? So our green office certification pivoted quickly and said, you know what, we can't go into offices anymore to give presentations about how to be more sustainable as an office, but we can do that through WebEx, through Zoom, whatever. And they started doing that right away. And it was kind of impressive. This was back in March when no one knew what the heck they were doing. And they're like, we can still do this. We can have the same program. However, the green events team can't, right? These events, the conferences where we're working with conferences of 200, 500 people trying to make sustainable decisions in the planning and execution of those events, we can't do that because there's no events. So they transitioned to like creating a calendar where they could highlight different virtual events going on to help people kind of get involved and still learn about the sustainable communities and activities that are happening. So sometimes you can just transition the same program into an online program. Sometimes you've got to really change what you're doing and go another way. And the third thing that our interns have done, which is amazing, is just like come up with new ways to make an impact on the campus community. So like they started a podcast. They're hosting these other virtual events. We're hosting a Amplifying BIPOC Voices in Sustainability event that's like, this is happening monthly a semester, and we're hoping to continue through the rest of the academic year. So it's like some of them were able to just take the situation and transition their program. Some of them said, okay, we've got to totally pivot and figure out a new way to make an impact. And some said, let's use this as an opportunity to kind of expand the ways that we're making an impact. And one of the things that has been a benefit is we would hold workshops or panels or that kind of thing. And we'd be sometimes a little disappointed by the attendance, right? But we've found that we're getting better attendance at some of these events because of the virtual nature of them. And that's something we never would have thought of before, right? So like, we host an environmental justice workshop in Memorial Union on a Wednesday night, and 10 people come, and we're like, man, why didn't more people come? But our first Amplifying BIPOC Voices event, we had like 75 people there, and it was also on a Wednesday night because it's more accessible. And so like, I think there are a lot of things that we're going to learn from this experience that we're going to carry forward, right? Like all of our Earth Week events, now it would seem crazy to not have some kind of virtual aspect to it, right? You're going to be able to attend so much more. So what am I saying? What's my experience? What's my advice? I don't know. I don't even think you'll need advice from me. But if I had to sum it up, it's that there are going to be things about your internship that just kind of suck because it's virtual. And it's all right to just admit that and name it and be frustrated. But there are also going to be opportunities for you to be inventive and creative and to take a risk or take a chance or find a way that the virtual platform, the virtual nature of your internship might allow you to reach more people or do more or kind of expand your efforts. And so look for those chances and be excited about them. And you know, the other thing I was going to say is that this is probably not necessary to say at this point, but like going through an internship online in a virtual space is going to, whether you like it or not, provide you with a bunch of professional skills that are going to come in handy later on. And it might not be obvious now, but getting all of this training, working on these various different platforms, being a master of Zoom and WebEx and Teams and Blackboard and all this different stuff, it's going to benefit you in the long run. So it might not be fun, but I think just, but I would just be aware of the fact that, like, you know, we're very explicit about how developing professional skills is a part of this internship. You know, people might not come to us because of that. They come to us because they care about the environment and their community and they want to make the world a better place. But we are explicit about how we want to develop professional skills so they can make more of an impact later on in their careers. And I think whether you like it or not, having a virtual internship is going to help develop those skills. I think that's
Thank you so much, Jason. Some good advice. Creel, if you would like to go next.
Do you mind if Pat goes first? Only because Pat is really she's really the driving force behind the internship that we had to offer. And I figure I'll just add on to whatever she says.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Pat, take it away.
Well, very good. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Pat McMurtry. I am the Annual Giving and Outreach Manager at Gathering Waters. And Gathering Waters is an environmental nonprofit. We are actually Wisconsin's Alliance for Land Trusts. And land trusts are organizations, nonprofit organizations that protect land throughout the state. And as a nonprofit, we have a unique experience to offer our interns. They can get into a nonprofit and see how it works. We're relatively small. We have approximately 6 full-time people. And then this year we have 2 interns, which is really great. We put an application or submit an application or request to the work study program. So we do have paid internships and paid interns. And we like to keep our interns for 2 years if we can, just because that consistency helps the intern and it also helps our organization. I started with Gathering Waters about 2.5 years ago. And so I've been through a few interns. The first year we had several that did not work out. And then September we hired one of our interns and she is still with us. She has transitioned to a part-time employee now. And then this fall we hired another intern, and it's been a really great experience for our organization and hopefully for the interns. Some of the things that were different between having a regular work environment and having to go virtual is just the aspect of the impromptu relationships that happen in the office environment. And those can be missed very easily. So what we have done is created specific times and purposeful meetings so that we can get to know each other. We did have a socially distanced gathering just so we could have an in-person event and see people. So it's just a challenge, and like all other aspects of business, it's one that somebody has to overcome and just learn to work with it, because that's what we have to deal with. So one of the other things we do is we have regular check-ins. We schedule regular check-ins with each other depending on who we are working with in the office. So we can check out workloads, we can check out status, project status, we can check out work-life balance to make sure that we're not overloading our interns, but they do have enough work to do to get the hours that they've requested. And, you know, the philosophy of an internship is it should be mutually beneficial. So it should benefit the organization, but it also should benefit the student who is the intern. So we try to look for things that the intern can do that will bolster the career resume as they go forward and they leave us. We're always asking the question, what can this project do? What part of this project can the intern do to have a new skill to add to their resume and a new work-life experience? What my advice would be, if you're going after an internship, if you get called, you get a resume, set a goal for what you want to get out of the internship as well, and then share that with your employer, because it also gives the employer an idea of the directions that you want to grow in, and then we can find opportunities and responsibilities that will help you attain those goals. The next is ask questions. Ask the next question. So you're assigned a responsibility. For instance, we have a lot of mundane tasks that we ask our intern to do just because we're a nonprofit. One of them is writing envelopes and hand addressing envelopes. Well, if you don't ask the next question, it's just like, I get to do all this boring work, but that's not really the case. We hand address the envelopes because that speaks to the donor in a more positive way and makes the donor feel like they are important to the organization. So it's a very important mundane task. It is still mundane, and you can plug your earphones in and listen to podcasts while you're doing it, but it's a very, very important task that we ask our interns to do. The next thing is take the initiative. There are things that are inherently needing to be done at a nonprofit just because of the usually small staff, large workload. So if there's something that you want to grow into, take the initiative. Ask if you can do a project. Ask if this project could be rolled into your capstone project so that you can work on your capstone project, give the organization some benefit, and also gain that work-life experience in a very real and tangible way that somebody can write you a letter of referral for. So those are just some of the skills that you can gain if you're purposeful. The other thing is we're in COVID and everybody knows we're in COVID, so take advantage of the tools you have available. Learn Zoom, learn how to become the facilitator on a Zoom call, because those are needed skills that you're going to have to learn in the outside world. Record conversations. Ask if you can record conversations and go back and re-listen to those topics that really interest you so you can gain more knowledge. Learn scheduling tools. Lots of companies like Asana, they like Trello. Slack has already been mentioned. Those are just some of the things that we use internally to keep us on track. And since we're all working virtually, they are more important now than ever. So that would be all that the experience of having an intern has done for Gathering Waters. And it's really neat to get to know our interns and to know what they want to get out of their internship, and ask them and have them respond to us with projects that they would like to use and grow on to build their careers. So thank you.
Thank you, Pat. This is all some excellent advice so far. All right, Creel, if you would like to finish us off.
Yeah, so I wanted Pat to go first just because she and I work together. We work at the same organization, and she really is the main person overseeing our most recent intern hire. So I just thought I could, and she did most of the work associated with all of that. So I thought I could just sort of add on, but I feel like I have a few other things I can add. So I'm Creel. I am the Associate Director of Development at Gathering Waters, which development is a fancy word for saying fundraising. So and I do work hand in hand very closely with Pat in a lot of our efforts. So I thought I would talk a little bit about, Pat mentioned that we have 2 interns. And so one of them is the one that she works with and that we just hired and brought on. When did we bring Emily? In September, maybe? And then we had another one who I started in January with this organization, but we had another intern who had been on since probably about the same time, September last year. So when I came on in January, I sort of took over supervisory responsibilities for her, which was great. It was wonderful. Everything was going well, of course, until we hit March. And then it was this interesting dynamic of, oh, how do I supervise you in this virtual landscape? And one of the, the challenging things about being a supervisor of an intern is, as Pat mentioned, often the tasks that, I'm asking my assistant to do are mundane tasks that maybe don't last very long. So in the office setting, you can say, hey, I'm done with this. What do you got? What's next? But in the virtual world, you can't do that. So it's been really important that we have all sorts of tools like developed to just sort of track what's going on. I love what you said earlier about how you have your virtual notebook or something where you track everything that you're doing. And essentially, Pat and I have done the same with both of our interns, is set up Asana boards for them, and just like we can put tasks on their Asana boards for them to do. Or my intern is really good about anytime she's got something new that she's working on, she adds it to the list, and then I'm automatically generated an email, so I see what she's doing. So that helps cut down on some of the do I think she has enough work to do? Is she staying busy? Because I'm not in the office, I can't see exactly what's going on. But the Asana board is just a really great way from a supervisory standpoint to be able to just sort of track and tally what's going on. And then, that doesn't fill all the holes clearly. So we just do a good job of checking in on about a weekly basis to just sort of know, okay, what's your workload look like this week? What do you have to do? What's going on? What can I help you how can I help you fill in some of those gaps? So, but yeah, all of those tools, we have leaned so heavily in all those tools that people have mentioned. And some of them I think were already in the works for us even before COVID, like Slack and Asana was being used to an extent with us, but we've just really leaned into those since COVID started, and they've really been life-saving, I think, for our team and as supervisors working with interns to just sort of make sure we're all on the same page and work is progressing all the time. So the other thing that I'll just mention too, that's different is definitely that component of getting to know one another and building camaraderie and rapport. And so when we brought on our most recent intern, we wanted to make sure that she felt like she was part of the team. So we did we're fortunate in that she is in the local area. So we did do an outdoor lunch with her early on that was just all of our team. And then we started we're going to do one-on-one outdoor, just get-togethers that are casual, not work-oriented, on a monthly basis, just sort of to help get us all through the winter, because it's going to be cold and gray and all of that. But we're all environmentalists and have our heavy winter boots and all of our clothes. So we'll be planning on going on some good hikes outside together, just to make sure that we're, continuing to build that rapport. And I think from that intern, in that internship role too, not only do you want to be developing work skills, but you also want to be developing networks and connections. Mm-hmm. So being able to sort of build a relationship beyond just the work environment with your colleagues is really helpful too. So if that's an option for as an intern to be hey, can we go on a walk? Can we go on a hike? Let's get to know each other a little bit outside of the work world. I would certainly recommend that. And I think that's probably going to go a long ways towards that person wanting to write you a recommendation or be a reference for you, is just having a little bit of rapport built outside of just the work world. And then the other thing I thought I just mentioned for advice is so much of getting an internship or a job for that matter is networking. And networking in a normal world is easy. You can go to a job fair, right? But there are actually so many more opportunities now. I think, if there's an organization that you are interested in getting your foot in the door in, get on their email list, see what virtual stuff they're hosting, go to a virtual event, oh, that's the person who's in charge of marketing and that's what I'm interested in. Send them an email after the event, be I was on this event and I saw you and I'd love to could you do a 30-minute Zoom call with me? That I think is like your new way of getting in the door with people when you can't meet them in person at something. And I think as students, like you probably didn't want to go to all those in-person events anyway, but like the virtual stuff is so easy and so accessible now. So I would like just recommend getting on that stuff, showing that you're excited and interested and engaged, and then like following up with folks afterwards. I think that's probably a lot easier than it ever was before. So that's I think that's what I got.
Yeah, thanks, Creel.
And
All really good advice from each one of you. So in our remaining time, for any of our students who joined us today to listen, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, you can put them in the chat. You can also unmute and ask them if you would like. I definitely have a few more questions that I can ask, and some of you may have questions for one another on the panel. We can take those as well.
And I'll jump in, Maureen, and just add that we had a couple of students that were unable to join us today, but have had virtual internships. So they signed up on a Google Doc. If you're interested in connecting with them, you can look at the Google Doc. There's their email address and where they interned, and you can connect with them afterwards if you have a question about that particular place.
Is this something, a link you can share in the chat, or will we follow up by email?
Did it? I thought I shared it in the chat. Did it go through? Okay.
There it is. Great. All right. Any questions from our panelists to one another? Anything stand out that you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, I'd be happy to ask a question.
Definitely.
Stephanie, so something that we focused on at FarmLink was, especially when the George Floyd protests began and the racial injustice things started happening, was we formed a social justice committee. You spoke about how when you the work you did pivoted to more towards social justice while you were in the office. Did that, were you working on that before all the protests happened? And how did it change when that started happening? Or how did it evolve as the protests went on in Madison in particular?
Are you referring more to the Boys and Girls Club internship that I had, or just what I wanted to bring into the table when I was planning on interning with the Lieutenant Governor?
Great distinction. How about both?
Oh, interesting. That's actually a really good question, because apart from this, I was involved with the governor's climate change task force. I've always been an advocate and a voice for racial justice, but a lot of times it didn't come to life to people so present as it is now. Is now more covered by the media. And so I've always talked like this about racial justice, but it wasn't until now that people are actually listening to me and now that they see it with their own eyes. So I think it has become more that people hear me now more, if that answers your question.
All right. So in a question that I had for all of us during this time period, we are embracing technology in ways we haven't done before. We're figuring out how to stay organized and try and manage our schedules in this virtual world. And as our panelists said, these are skills that you as students are developing, that you're going to use in as we go forward. So there are a lot of environmental opportunities that involve specific technical skills, and I think this goes back to Claire. You mentioned taking or having some GIS skills development for students whose major doesn't have those specific opportunities. What is your advice for building those skills out?
Yeah, I think like, I mean, I just had taken a GIS class before my internship, so it was really only one, and then I had like a little bit of programming experience from a class. But definitely what I found out this summer is like YouTube videos on this stuff, like you can learn a lot by yourself. Like I was very much encouraged to learn through YouTube and like other educational resources. Um, like especially GIS and even just using like Esri Online, which is essentially like they have different things like dashboards and story mapping, which are almost like a Prezi or a PowerPoint, but more using like maps and different visuals. Like those are really interesting skills that I even see like come up on like job applications now. Like, have you ever had experience using this? And even if you don't have the opportunity to take a class, like throughout a semester or something, if you have like a little bit of downtime, just set a goal for yourself, even make like a YouTube playlist is what I've done, and like add different videos to it that help you work on specific skills. Even getting like a little bit of experience and understanding like lingo that goes with some of that stuff can go a long way.
Very good. Yes. I like all those ideas. Thank you. So I think a question for both Jake and Stephanie, and then we'll try and get in another question or two for our panelists. Seeing how you got into these experiences as a result of having to change plans for your summer, what is something that you learned from your experience that you want to take with you as you explore other opportunities, or maybe are using more of this current semester from your past experience? Maybe
You can go first, Jacob.
Happy to. No, that's a great question, Maureen. I think there's so many different elements to what I've done so far that'll sort of help me moving forward. I think it really depends on what context you want to look at it in. First and foremost, I think the communication piece is definitely number one. So that's both internally and externally. Just being accountable to the people you work with is super huge. And perhaps it's even more pronounced because you're not like seeing each other, so you have to be like make a concerted effort to do so. So definitely that's probably my number one takeaway. Also, and I forgot to mention this, but thinking about it when Claire and Stephanie talked about it, as well as Pat and Creel and Jason as well. Something I felt like just during the pandemic, especially with schoolwork too, is just like every day sort of becomes the same just in terms of your routine and what you're doing, and you don't really feel like you're accomplishing anything. So what I started to do towards the end of it was I would just make a notebook and like a checklist of what I had to do that day, and as I did stuff, just check it off, and like I can look back then and see, okay, I did this, I did that. And it also allowed for me, another thing too was like organize my time, because the days easily get away from you now. And that was, I think that those two aspects of communication and organization of time and being directed in how I use that time, that was definitely huge.
Definitely. Yes, agreed. How about you,
I
Stephanie?
Oh, sorry. No, but I agree with like what Jacob has just said, like communication. Like, actually, Claire also touched on this. Like, if you don't know how to do something, you can't imagine how much you can learn from YouTube. Like, there was a lot of times that my employer just said, do this, and there was no training because we were virtual, remote, and so I had to figure it out on my own. And it was just so easy to like, you know, outreach, to just do that outreach part and then just like ask questions, because that was the most important part. And then more into that, what Jacob was saying about like every day becomes monotonous. I hate that feeling. I need to like have something different every day and like see different people and talk to different people because I'm an extrovert. And what I started doing was have my mental health days. I started, reaching out to my employer and I said, I need something different. I need to shake things up. I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna take a walk, or I'm gonna practice more self-care. And most of the times, like 10 out of 10 times, my employer always like comes back and says like, that is totally fine. Take your time, please. let us know what's going on in life. And if not, we'll respect that. That's fine too.
That is great advice. Definitely for all of us, for sure. Yeah. So for Jason and Pat and Creel, for the interns that you've taken on in recent time, have you found that you've added some different interviewing questions that get at kind of this transition that we're working in now? And if so, can you, I'm putting you on the spot. Can you think of how you might ask a question like that for your future interns?
Well, I'll jump in as my dog also wants to jump in. I haven't had to incorporate that yet, but it's a really interesting question, right? We did all our hiring at the start of like in January and February of this year, so before all this happened. But it is something that I think would be important to incorporate, and you know, we're going to start doing our next round of hiring in January and February, and we don't know what situation will be like, and so my normal kind of spiel about what the internship looks like is going to be different, and therefore I should be, you know, incorporating what kinds of things might affect someone's both interest and capacity for this internship based on the virtual nature. And I don't know what that is, but so I'll duck your question a little and just ask for some help, because this is what I want to figure out. Right now we've made the switch and we're pretty good at virtual meetings, but I feel like we're going to get to a point where we want to incorporate the virtual meeting, but also have the ability to have in-person meetings, right? So like, if we're looking at something like the ASHE conference next year, or the Nelson Earth Day conference, where some people can attend and that's safe and that's fine and we have in person, but we want to have the accessibility that this kind of virtual platform has allowed. I don't know if you've ever done that. We definitely tried it in March, where it's like most of us are in the room, but some of us aren't. And so it's like one face on a screen, and it just didn't work at all. But I think there's a way to combine these things, and I don't know what that is. So if someone figures that out, you tell me, and we could be like, UW-Madison can be the pioneers of combining in-person and virtual to create like a real kind of event that feels authentic for everyone involved.
Yes, I think we're going to see more of that coming out of this time period for sure. Yeah. Pat or Creel, any ideas?
I think for sure we're going to be focused on the types of communication skills they have, as far as what platforms they're used to using. Are they Zoom literate? Do they use Slack? What kind of planning tools do they use to keep themselves on track? Would they be willing to learn a new skill or a new program? I think that's all going to be relative when we go forward. And I think also just asking about personal style, because we're all different. There are some people who don't mind being sequestered in a house by themselves for hours and hours at a time, but there are others who need to get out and have that personal interaction with people. So I think that also has to be factored into an intern application and their resume, just to know what kind of people they are and how they work best. So that would be all that I would have to add. And then as far as the question about having virtual and in-person events, I think the early remote learning from the UW already did that to a point. We would have in-person classes, but the professor would be someplace else. So I think that's totally doable. And I think it's just an expansion of the technology that we already have. So
yes. Agreed. And Emily, I think I'm going to turn it back to you, since we are, or Creel, do you have any additions? Okay.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That was a really awesome panel, and I'm glad we could figure out the recording so that more students can hear from all of you and learn about what it's like to have a virtual internship and what folks are looking for moving forward. So thank you all for joining us, and have a good rest of your afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.